Olá, espaçonauta! Pessoal, todo mundo acompanhou o vídeo de ontem aí da chegada da CHANG E 6, né, da cápsula, contendo as amostras, né? O nosso colaborador aqui, o Alfredo Lopes Morais, lá de Portugal, fez a tradução de um vídeo que foi traduzido lá pela TV da China CGTN, uma live, na verdade, com a chegada das amostras. E vale muito a pena ver, sabe por quê? Embora eu tenha feito um vídeo com todos os detalhes aí do que aconteceu, as principais partes, durante essa live, os cientistas que estão envolvidos aí no projeto da CHANG E 6 explicam vários detalhes sobre o pouso, sobre a missão, então é muito bacana e dá para entender muita coisa legal. Vale a pena assistir esse vídeo aqui, por mais que a gente já tenha falado do retorno das amostras, vale muito a pena você ver até o final, porque o Alfredo faz ele legendado aqui, dá para entender tudo, é muito bacana. Não perde não, para você entender mais ainda sobre a missão de CHANG E 6, tá certo? Vamos lá ver?
Hello everyone and welcome to our special coverage of China's CHANG E 6 lunar mission. I'm Zhongxi, live in Beijing. The CHANG E 6 mission has entered the final stretch of its 53-day quest to collect samples from the far side of the moon. If successful, this would mark the first time for samples from the moon's far side to be brought back to Earth. Experts are hoping this milestone mission can reveal answers to the mysteries of the moon and the solar system's history. We'll follow the space probe's return live here on CGTN. Around 10 minutes ago, CHANG E 6's returner separated from the orbiter. The returner is expected to land in Siziwang Banner in North China's Inner Mongolia region soon. And for more analysis, joining me in the studio, Professor Yang Yuguang, Vice Chair of the International Astronautical Federation's Space Transportation Committee, and Xu Yansong, former Director of International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. Welcome to our program, gentlemen. First of all, CGTN reporter Zheng Yibing is at the landing site in Siziwang Banner in North China's Inner Mongolia region. He will walk us through the search and retrieval operations.
We are at the Siziwang Banner in Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region in China. So the search and retrieval mission for the return of the CHANG lunar lander, the CHANG lunar returner is underway, and the air and the ground team are in position, and everyone is waiting for the order for the next move. And I'm with the ground team, so take a look at the cars, vehicles behind me. We are at a location some 20 kilometers away from the expected landing spot of the CHANG E 6 re-entry capsule. And also the air detachment, they are closely watching and standing by for the next move. The Siziwang Banner landing site is like the Dongfeng landing site, located some 1,000 kilometers west of this area. Now, this landing site is not on the Gobi Desert, it is on the grassland, but it is also favorable for the soft landing of the spacecraft. The whole procedure of the search and retrieval work for the re-entry capsule of the CHANG E 6 is like the mission we witnessed almost 2 months ago at the Dongfeng landing site when the Shenzhou 17 manned spacecraft returned. So that means the air and ground facilities and detachments, they are mobilized, and the measurement and control system at the landing site is closely watching the traces of the re-entry capsule of the CHANG E 6 lunar probe. And also, we want to mention something else. Compared with the year 2020, in December that year, the CHANG E 5 mission. Well, compared with that mission, this time the ground team is upgraded and facilitated with the new and small search vehicle and a command car. They're linked with all the working system at the landing site. And also back in the year 2020, when the CHANG E 5 mission was conducted, it was a dark, freezing cold, snowy night. So the mission at that time was at risk of losing the beacon transmitted from the re-entry capsule of CHANG E 5. Well, back here at the CHANG E 6 mission at the Siziwang Banner landing site. Well, this time, the weather here today is sunny. It may look sunny, but the weather may change instantly with the torrential rains and even the sandstorms. So this time, the brand new way of using both the beacon and the optical measurement and control system is being used for the success of this mission. So at here, everyone is waiting for the order to enter the targeted area.
The Chang'e 6's mission to the moon and back lasted 53 days, and that's more than double the duration of its predecessor, Chang'e 5, in 2020. Now, here's a recap of the milestones in Chang'e 6's historic mission to retrieve mankind's first ever samples from the far side of the moon. The nation is approximately 5,000 kilometers away from the Earth. The returner will detach to begin its entry into Earth's atmosphere. The ground staff will then calculate its landing point based on the real-time data transmitted from the vehicle. As the craft re-enters the atmosphere, it will experience a period during which all communications with the ground are lost. This phase, known as blackout, occurs between 35 and 80 kilometers above Earth due to intense heat. And during this period, the Chang'e 6 returner will switch to autonomous navigation mode, enabling it to continue on the predetermined route even without contact.
We use measurement and control tools and optical devices to access the real-time location of the returner and predict the landing point based on that. The returner will experience a process of auto-navigation and control. The influence of the blackout is quantifiable. The duration of the blackout is subject to the shape and re-entering velocity of the spacecraft.
I have the great pleasure to be joined in the studio by Yang Yuguang, Vice Chair of the International Astronautical Federation's Space Transportation Committee, and Xu Yansong, former Director of International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. Gentlemen, fantastic to see both of you today. I am absolutely thrilled to have both of you on because it was also the three of us that welcomed back Chang'e 5 at the end of 2020, about 3.5 years ago. This time, history could be made with those samples collected from the far side of the moon that could provide essential clues into the composition and evolution of the moon and possibly the history of the early solar system. Let's get very technical first, starting with Professor Yang here. About the return process, we know the returner will enter into a blackout zone twice after entering the atmosphere. Walk us through what a black zone is and what's going to happen.
That's when the whole combination of the returner and the orbiter approaching the Earth because of influence of the gravity of the Earth, so it becomes faster and finally when it reaching the nearby of the Earth, the speed can reach to about 11 kilometers per second, or the second cosmic velocity. So when it enters the atmosphere, because of the high speed and the friction with the atmosphere, so it will cause high temperature. That to have a very effective thermal protection of the vehicle and to protect our very valuable samples, we use what we call the ablative materials. So when it vaporizes, it can keep the heat out and protect the whole vehicle. But you know that with the temperature, the vaporized ablative material will be ionized, and with these ionized gases, it will form a closed envelope which can block all the radio waves from the vehicle. So as you mentioned, the communication with the ground will be interrupted. We cannot get any parameters of the vehicle itself by the devices on board the vehicle. So, but you know that you don't have to worry about that, because although at this stage we cannot have the communication in this blackout zone with the vehicle, but still our ground stations and also our space tracking ships can have a sight of the vehicle and can measure the trajectory very precisely with either the optical measures or with the readers. So still, although in this blackout area, but we can still have a prediction, have a calculation of the trajectory, and finally to help the ground rescue teams to find the landing point as soon as possible.
So it's real-time monitoring, real-time calculation of the trajectory of the orbiter. Mr. Xu, how long can these blackouts go?
Well, this blackouts normally occurs during the descending of the capsule, of the returner itself, because of the friction. Descending from 80 kilometers all the way to 35, 40 kilometers. This will take a few minutes, no more than that, because the velocity, as Professor Yang mentioned, the first cosmic speed was 7 kilometers per second, and then when it is attracted by the Earth gravity, it accelerates the speed up to 11 kilometers per second, and then it will slowly, because of the thickening of the atmosphere, it drags the capsule down. So the slowdown of the capsule decelerates all the way to 30 kilometers, 35 kilometers, and then it's time ready for deployment of parachutes so that we can further decelerate the speed and to make it a safer landing in the banner.
So the contents of the returner, the precious samples collected from the far side of the moon, have to withstand, first of all, high velocity and then very, very high temperatures. How do we make sure that they stay protected and intact inside the returner? You mentioned this a little bit just now.
One thing proud me most is that you know that the Apollo program with the 6 Apollo missions, they can sample back to the Earth more than 380 kilograms. But the difference or the different point of our Chang'e 5 and Chang'e 6 is that we get the sample with vacuum condition. You know the moon is in a vacuum condition, so we get the sample with the original environment of the moon. So this is very helpful for us, for the scientists, to separate the influence of the disturbance of the atmosphere of the Earth. So first things first, we must keep the tank of the samples, the container, in a vacuum condition. It is well sealed during the sampling phase, the end of the sampling phase, and also when it is transferred from the sender to the returner, it also with the second protection. So this is well protected, but obviously, as you mentioned, there will be a very, very crucial environment during the re-entry. One thing is the acceleration. You know that during a manned, for crewed spacecraft, usually in a normal case, we should not have a G-forces more than 4. But you know that this is an amended one. So the designed, or in a normal trajectory, the G-forces will up to 7. But that do not matter. And also, there will be very intensive vibration and also the heating we mentioned about. But you know, also we already have a very perfect thermal protection system. So the container itself is still in room temperature. As I mentioned, with the vaporized the ablative materials, the heat will be brought away. So we don't need to worry about the temperature. And also, because of the mechanical design, we can also make it okay for the influence of the vibration. So everything will keep okay. And also, I should emphasize again that because of it is in vacuum condition, it is very helpful for our scientists to get the right results.
All right, gentlemen, do stay with me here on our program. I'll be back with you in just a moment. The Beijing Aerospace Control Center has been monitoring the whole process of the landing. CGTN reporter Sun Ye has more there.
The Chang'e 6 probe and the world's first lunar samples from the moon's far side is coming back soon. Now, here at the Beijing Control Center, you hear the commands issued time and again, but at the place where the professionals are staying, they've been quiet. This is the case for the last 50 days and more too. For much of the time, this place is quiet. You only hear commands issued. That kind of speaks to how big and complex this mission is. Now, earlier we talked to the deputy chief for the Chang'e 6 mission, and he said this mission allows no mistakes and allows no missteps. And all the while, as Chang'e 6 is making groundbreaking history. Now, obviously, you also hear a bit of jostling around me. That's the media, obviously, because the Chang'e 6 mission is the world's first lunar sample retrieve mission, and that's front news today in China. But elsewhere in the world, people are watching too. Earlier, we also talked to the chairman for the French National Center of Space Studies, and he said he will be tuning in for the Chang'e 6 comeback simply because it's such a momentous mission. And over the last weeks, we've also talked to international scientists who are here in Beijing because the Chang'e 6 probe also carried multiple international payloads. That's including a Pakistan Cube satellite. And one of the Pakistani scientists have told us after that mission was declared accomplished, he said this mission is laying a firm ground for this generation of young people because moon and the deep space exploration for this generation is part and parcel of their life. This is their age of discovery. The international scientists we talked to also said every signal, every piece of information, of course, including the coming lunar samples, are so important. These are wonderful gifts from the moon that they will treasure in the weeks, in the months, in the years ahead. We heard so much from them, but I still want to share one more quote with you coming from a French scientist. His instrument is the first instrument from France to land on the moon since 1970. And he said, it's wonderful. It's simply exciting to be working on the world's first lunar sample retrieve mission on the lunar far side, but it's just as exciting and wonderful to be working with people from the far side of the Earth. And that excitement and the gift from the moon is coming back soon. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Scientists say the samples obtained by China's probe includes material from beneath the lunar surface, further boosting man's understanding of the moon's two different sides and its relationship to Earth.
The geologic activity responsible for the differences between the near side and far side of the moon has always confused the scientific community. Now that we have collected samples from the far side, we will very likely unravel this mystery by comparing the rock sample from the two sides. The South Polar Aitken Basin is the largest impact structure on the moon, so we might be able to dredge up material from very deep parts on the moon, not just from the surface and the crust, but also the lunar mantle. No one knows what the lunar mantle looks like. It would be a huge progress if we have such samples. We also hope to find the material that resulted from the impact and determine its age. This can help us find out when all the spaces formed. Every new sample is a major boost to the entire revolutionary history of the moon.
After its retrieval from the capsule, the samples will be transported to the National Astronomical Observatories of the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing. This is where China's first lunar samples laboratory has been set up. Experts have designed special rooms and equipment for unsealing and storing the materials for future research.
In this room, we place an operation table, which is mainly used to unseal the package containing the lunar samples from the Chang'e 6. It is a nitrogen-filled environment. The pressure inside will be higher to avoid the possibility that the atmospheric environment will contaminate the samples.
The world's first ever samples from the moon's far side could take months or even years for scientists around the world to decipher the secrets these samples carry with them. But judging from what the CHANG E 5 lunar samples have uncovered, the samples from this mission will be treasure troves for scientists across disciplines. Again, CGTN reporter Sun Ye has more.
Less than 4 years ago, the CHANG E 5 mission had brought back home 1.731 kilograms of lunar samples from the moon's near side, a better-known part of the Earth's satellite. Those samples rocked the science world nonetheless. From CHANG E 5 samples, there have emerged the youngest lunar basalt samples man has ever obtained. The new lunar mineral named chang'esite, better understandings of the moon's evolution, and traces of water, where scientists say, judging from the CHANG E 5 samples, there was quite an amount in the moon's mid and high and mid to low altitudes.
There have been so many new discoveries, a lot of published papers. Just look at the number of publications. That shows rekindled enthusiasm for the moon.
CHANG E 5 lunar samples have been available for application and research by both domestic and international scientists.
Most of the teams applying for samples are in the field of earth science, including geochemistry, petrology, and geophysics. But there are also physicists, for example, hoping to do some radioactive nuclides research with the samples. There are applicants hoping to research cell toxicity, biological culture, plant culture with the samples, and also applicants in the field of material science, chemistry, and others.
As of this June, the CHANG E 5 lunar soil samples have been distributed to 114 scientific research teams, totaling 258 samples that together weigh 77.7 grams. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
If you're just joining us here on CGTN, you're looking at our live coverage of the CHANG E 6 mission re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Professor Yang, what are we looking at now? It looks like the skip re-entry stage of the return.
Well, obviously, this is what I mentioned, the video camera mounted in the ground station or the ground space tracking ships, which captures the trajectory of the vehicle. You can see the I believe probably this is the infrared image. So the vehicle has already been captured by the ground station, so they can have a very precise measurement of the trajectory, the direction, the position, and also, as you mentioned, in the real-time calculation, we can predict what the landing site, the coordinate, the longitude, and the latitude.
So it's a good sign that we have this visual right now. Mr. Xu, help us understand that calculation process. Mr. Yang mentioned it's real-time assessment, real-time calculation for the ground team to get ready for the landing of that vehicle. What does that process look like?
There is a marking point of the separation between the service module and the returner. Then there is, of course, a timing, exactly how to track this whole process landing to the Sizhuang banner. Because
is this the Sizhuang banner in Mongólia that we're looking at?
That's the landing site itself. Of course, if you want to land here, you have to go through a trajectory that comes entering the atmosphere as far as the let's say West Africa, and then goes through Pakistan, and then through the territories of Tibet, and then come to Sizhuang banner in Inner Mongolia. So that is the descending process that you refer to the Earth, let's say a shuttle point that is from all the way from Africa down to Sizhuang banner, according to the inclination of the descending capsule itself. So the image you have just seen, the black with the white spot, is normally infrared images from the ground tracking facility. Normally it's an infrared camera that can shoot the object itself. As far as we can see, it's still in outer space, and it's still communicating with the ground. And it's, once it's entering like a shooting star, it will be in the blackout period, where you can see that the plasma and the ironing process of the exterior.
So we won't be able to see it if it's entered the black zone period.
We can see it.
We can still see it through an infrared camera.
We can see it. We can targeting it and also tracking it, but we cannot have the communication with it because the recovery one has already found it. Okay. So just several minutes when we first time see this video, we heard that the recovery one has already captured the. I believe that it is already in the territory of China. Because usually, you know that we have many live coverage of the return of the Shenzhou spaceship before, just in this studio, and usually the recovery one and the recovery two are the readers to receive the signal. Great. So the recovery 2 has already captured the vehicle, the returner, and also from the voice of the ground staff, probably maybe at this moment is already get out of the blackout area because they mentioned that they captured in bilateral ways. So not only the communication, all the signals received from the ground station, but also maybe it is also has already established the communication between the ground and the vehicle.
Again, we're looking at the possible landing site in Sizewang Banner, Inner Mongolia. You will see that this is vast grasslands, flat terrain, all ideal for the landing. The retrieval of the returner, because if it's mountainous, then it's going to be problematic. So the grassland, flat terrain is specifically chosen for this purpose. And I seem to remember the last time with the Chang'e 5, in the tracking process, we had the help of international partners.
Yes.
Is it the same this time around that we...
Exactly. As you mentioned about the 10 or 20 minutes before, you mentioned that the returner has separated from the orbiter. So at that moment, the altitude is about 5,000 kilometers high. So at that moment, it's still far from the territory of China. So with the help of our ground station in Argentina, all the ground stations by European Space Agency, we can have the very precise measurement of the trajectory outside the atmosphere. So that is also very necessary for the as a very important information for other ground stations along the trajectory to capture the vehicle as soon as possible.
Okay. And when the returner is approximately 10 kilometers above the ground, it will detect the atmospheric pressure and altitude. It will then deploy the drogue parachute by releasing the parachute container over to decelerate the vehicle. And finally, it will apply braking techniques before extending the main parachute to ensure a controlled and safe landing.
The returner contains sample containers, which can easily be damaged by excessive overload. Therefore, we must ensure that the overload does not exceed 5 times the force of gravity throughout the entire return process. Before the drogue parachute deploys, the descent speed ranges from 110 to 130 meters per second. Once the parachute opens, the speed decreases to approximately 60 to 70 meters per second.
Yeah, we're still monitoring the returner of the Chang'e 6 mission as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. How far away, Professor Yang, are we from the parachute deployment?
Well, it is very interesting. You know, that just several seconds before, I heard a voice from the ground staff. The tracking task of the Shuangcheng ground station has already been accomplished. You know that the Shuangcheng is very close to the Jiuqian satellite launch center. This means that at this moment, at this right moment, the returner is already to the east of the Jiuqian satellite launch center. So it's already very, very close, maybe several hundred kilometers from the Sizewang Banner. So I believe that within several...
Are we looking at the deployment of the parachutes already? I seem to think. Yeah, it does seem...
We can just see the light beacon.
Yeah, Professor Yang was just saying that it's going to be very, very close to its predetermined, pre-designed landing site in Inner Mongolia.
Yeah.
It does look like there's a parachute above.
Yeah. So the visible light cameras has already captured the returner.
Okay, so these are the cameras.
So
okay, the main parachute
has already
is
been
now
jettisoned.
being deployed.
And the main parachute will be deployed soon. So it has two parachutes. One is the drogue chute, which will be deployed first to deaccelerate the returner first, and at a very safe velocity, after jettisoning of the or separation of the drogue chute, the main parachute will be deployed.
And it's a stark contrast to what we witnessed with the Chang'e 5 mission, because it was midnight back then, and this is broad daylight. We're able to get a very good visual of the returner as well as the parachute. The parachute is always in bright colors, so people can spot that very easily. But the last time with the Chang'e 5 mission, we had to use a lot of infrared images. It was a bright spot in pitch dark night, and this time it's much easier to spot both the returner and the parachute.
But if you remember, Zhongshi, that time when the capsule landed, there was some kind of rodent that was roaming around. It was like a small mouse or rabbit that showed up in the camera.
You know, that Sizhuang banner is very close to my home city, Huhehot. You know, this moment is almost the most comfortable season in the Mongolia. Comparing with last time, as you mentioned, in December 2020, it's extremely cold and the temperature can reach to 40 degrees minus below the zero. So this time, and you can see that the sky is very, very clear and it's in a very good weather. So this time, even for the ground team, is more comfortable for the comparing with the last time.
Absolutely. It's great to hear that the job is somehow easier given the complexity of the system, the ground system, to locate the vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. So we should emphasize that the safe return of our Chang'e 6 probe is not only the task of the probe itself, of the rocket, but also the whole system, especially the TT and C system. The telemetry, telecontrol, and the communication system plays a very extremely important role in the whole process. So every critical step, with the help of the TT and C system, we can have the proper operations, and including this return.
So the time window we have today, early afternoon, which as we said is rather ideal. How was this time window chosen?
Well, there are many different factors. First, we should consider about the position, the relative position of the moon to the Earth. So only at a certain position we can get the operation we call the trans-Earth orbit insertion, which means that with the main engine of the orbiter, we just accelerate it to the speed the escape velocity relative to the moon, and then it will go into the what we call the trans-Earth orbit from the moon. It will take about 3 to 5 days for the vehicle. During this whole process, we have to keep a mid-course correction. Great. So from the voice of the commander, we can hear that the communication is normal, and also the status, including the attitude of the returner, is in a very good condition. So
we just saw the cameras mounted on the convoys, right? Part of the ground team
probably
moving their way.
Yes, this is a video from mounted on the ground vehicle or on the helicopter.
Okay.
I think there are a number of predictions. We just heard that there's number 4, fourth time prediction that they will be more precise. Of course, it goes along with the trajectory, with the wind, with the deployment of the parachute and the carry of the wind to the landing site. So
this
is the fifth prediction. So it's getting more precise. The ground team is going to rush over to get ready to receive the capsule itself.
So how many predictions are there in total before we can get a pretty good idea of when and where that vehicle is going to land?
So we've already seen the 5th one.
This is the 5th one.
So you know that at this moment, because of the parachute has already been deployed, so the control system of the returner does not work at this moment. So what we consider about is the wind. We must have a very precise measurement with readers and other ground facilities to measure the wind speed, and with this help we can have a more precise prediction. Maybe we will have another prediction, and also the Beijing Flight Control Center will announce the final prediction, and also the ground staff and the helicopter will go to the final prediction point.
So there's a calculation from trajectory to the meteorologies. So right now it's just carry of the wind that determines the final spot. Of course, it's already descended within a few kilometers above the Earth. So I think it's quite precise at this moment, the fifth prediction, and it won't be too far to gather this because you have visual all the time, so it won't be lost.
Are you saying you can tell it's only a handful of kilometers above the ground now?
Yes, it's only a few kilometers above the ground.
Okay, then it's going to be a very fast process now. Are we counting a couple of minutes, or are we counting?
The most critical phase of this return process has already been well conducted. So I believe that at this moment, also the ground staff and the Beijing Flight Control Center, the staff there is relatively relaxed at this moment.
The most dangerous and unpredictable phases are the blackouts.
Exactly, and also that we adopted a steep re-entry, so it enters the atmosphere twice, and also the control. We have the control. We adopted a semi-ballistic or a semi-lift return process. So it is a controlled vehicle. We also have the propulsion system on board the returner to control the attitude and then control the direction of its lift forces to adjust its trajectory towards the predicted or the designed landing point. But that this. For what I mentioned, this procedure is all depend on the vehicle itself. We can do the ground cannot do anything if anything wrong happened. So what we can do is to just predict if there are any deviation from the theoretical landing point and the real one. But that this moment, obviously, the ground staff, the ground station work very properly.
We're now able to get a closer and better look of the return capsule and the parachute with the bright stripes. Mr. Xu said it's just a couple of kilometers above the ground now, so we should expect a landing relatively soon. You're watching and monitoring the whole process for you right here on CGTN. Make sure you stay with us as we bring every step of the return process of Chang'e 6 to you. Again, you're looking at the Sizewang banner in Inner Mongolia. It was also the location for the return of the Chang'e 5 mission at the end of 2020. That mission brought soil from the near side of the moon. This time, soil samples have been collected from the far side of the moon. The first time in humanity's history. What secrets will that reveal is on the minds of a lot of people watching this process, whether that will provide clues to the evolution and composition of the moon, the differences between the far and near sides of the moon, and also the solar system's history. Everyone is watching this process very closely.
So touching down could be happening at any minute because it's very close to the ground, but its descending speed is a few meters per second. So it takes some time to descend for the final couple of kilometers, but it's going to be on the precious puzzle is going to be on the ground at any time, I think.
We're expecting a landing anytime soon. So we're watching the descent of the returner. It's landed. You can hear applause from the ground control and command center as people watch this with breath that is bated. Soil from the far side of the moon now brought back to Earth in that return vehicle. We have a pretty good visual of the landing site now.
Now we see is a video from the camera mounted on the helicopter. Yeah.
Yes,
we can see that from the above.
So the helicopter is on standby. It will also guide the ground team as they move closer.
Yeah, it
to
also
retrieve.
can give the right coordinate to help the ground team to go there as soon as possible.
They've done drills like this many times before to make sure that different systems can cooperate with each other in a swift and efficient manner.
So this is history. Far side of the moon, first time landed on Earth.
Absolutely. We're watching history being made today as soil samples collected from the far side of the moon have landed in Sizewang banner, Inner Mongolia in China. It will be some time before the ground team can move in and locate the returner?
直升机目视返回器呈倾斜状态，报告完毕。
So it's reporting that the helicopter is watching the return vehicle, and it's not exactly upright. It's
in an incline. Yeah.
It's yes. Does that matter? Is that a good sign?
It doesn't
Is that
matter.
It doesn't.
okay?
Yeah, because you know that this is a manned re-entry capsule, so it's not so complex comparing with the return of the Shenzhou spaceship. So we don't have so many steps. We can still remember that during the return of the Shenzhou spaceship, we have the jettisoning of the heating shield, and also we have a retro rocket to slow down the vehicle. But you know, for this, it can afford the impact.
我是北京雄鹰，请讲。
Okay, we just heard from the helicopter that the vehicle has landed and is not in an upright position. It's also been reporting coordinates of the landing site so that the helicopter has arrived above the landing site.
We can see the dust blow up by the helicopter's blade.
北京明白。
So it's in safe pocket now.
It's in safe pockets now. It's a much better visual compared to CHANG E 5 because it's broad daylight. We have very good visuals. You can see the helicopter arriving in position.
Yeah.
They will be providing coordinates for the ground team moving their way into the proximity of the return vehicle.
Yeah. So we can still, at this moment, as we discussed, the ground team is continue to have the prediction and report of the final coordinate, the longitude and the latitude of the returner continuously. And also, I should mention that this is the 11th successful sample return from the moon of all the missions of human being. But the first one from the far side.
The first one from the far side, the second time for China, and we'll look forward to learning more about those samples. It could take months, even years, before they provide any clues or secrets about the composition and evolution of the
北京明
moon.
白。
Yeah.
东风，我是北京。
And one thing we should consider, you know, that because we still have a propulsion system on board the returner, although only a very small amount of propellants, but still it is toxic. So we should also protect the ground staff from that.
You know, we're witnessing history being made today. I do want to talk to you gentlemen both about how history was made this time. We can see individuals on foot, an individual on foot making his way to the vehicle. So this means the ground staff have arrived.
The helicopter crew has just approaching this, I think.
So the personnel we're seeing are the helicopter crew. They're not from the ground.
I think ground crews are arriving, but just now we just saw the helicopters landing. The second helicopter is coming. The first one has some crew already have preliminary study of the site, and I think they are coordinating the ground convoy to come as soon as possible. They have to take the capsule back and then carefully, like Professor Yang has mentioned, there's a passivation process, you know, to ventilate all the batteries, the fuels and explosives and pyrotechnics, so that it's in a passive mode, and it's more safe for the scientists to maneuver and to unlock the capsule itself to take the precious cargo out.
So it's interesting because they will take the whole capsule back to Beijing. It's not like they'll just open a hatch and just take the cargo out, right?
Yeah.
They will take the whole thing back to Beijing. It'll be a while before the cargo is unloaded from the vehicle and studied. So it's going to be a process.
So let's say the cargo itself is basically made in Beijing, so that the experts and teams are here, and expertise are here, and the scientific teams are also here. So everything is done properly here in Beijing before it's launched. So it's coming back to Beijing is more safe. Rather than opening the puzzle in the landing site.
Got it, because they have built a specific lunar mission laboratory here in Beijing where they will have a safe environment to unseal what has been contained in that cargo. It's not like unboxing a gift box. It has to be done meticulously in a safe environment, safe and scientific environment.
And not only that, but also the Chang'e 6 itself, including the landers, the ascenders, and the descenders, and the returners, are all made in Beijing. So everything has more expertise and technical support, let's say, in Beijing. So it's more safer to open it here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We will get the container out of the returner in the ordinary room, but we will open the container in the vacuum chamber. So that's very important for us.
What does that container look like? Because I don't think I've got a good look.
Well, it is a cylindrical one.
Yes.
Yeah, cylindrical one. So not very big. It is very interesting that the design, the capacity is 2 kilograms of samples, but that greatly depends on the density of the sample itself. So that is reason, although it is also very normal, but last time during the Chang'e 5 mission we get 1.731 kilograms of samples. This is because the density is lower than the normal condition, but that's still very in the design margin. So I hope that this time we can get more than 2 kilograms.
And it's like one of the car pistons, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
One of the car pistons or cylindric shape of the of the engine. One of the engine piston. It's shaped like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
So they're reporting that the return capsule does look intact from the outside. Okay, now we're getting a good visual of what is happening.
Yeah. As Yansu mentioned, it's in the inclined position.
Yeah. Because on the charcoal side, is the black side has been burned out during their entry, and the lighter color on the top has not experienced these burnings and plasma impacts, so it was looked more or less the original colors.
And another thing why it is inclined is because that the design, the center of its mass has a deviation from this cylindrical axis. This is to have control, to have attack of angle during the re-entry, to make it possible for the controlled changing the direction of the lift.
So this is a good color because you can see only one side is burned. If it's completely burned, it means it has been tumbling in the atmosphere, which is not in a controlled descending process.
Yeah. What Yansu mentioned is a ballistic re-entry. So that's not controlled, not like this one.
Probably why we've been hearing good status, judging by just the surface and the outside of the return capsule. You see individuals.
is a helicopter.
You see individuals assessing the status of the returner.
Yeah.
He's making sure that the capsule is safe enough to be approached by human beings. All the radiations, all the fuels are safe. So
he's not wearing any protective gear.
But he's using the probe to detect the level of radiations and level of toxic materials.
The propellants, the toxic propellants. Yeah. So you can see this is the shape of the returner is like a bell. And the total mass of this returner is about 300 kilograms, much smaller than the returner of the main capsule, which is about 3,000 kilograms. So this is much smaller than that.
It's about 1 meter in diameter.
Probably.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's say it's just a miniature of the human moon landing process, because the Chang'e 6 is a complete process for human mission, but it's just a miniaturized process.
What Yansu mentioned is what we call the lunar orbit rendezvous, because that for the that I always mention to the media that our Chang'e 5 and the Chang'e 6 missions are like an unmanned, minimized Apollo missions, because the whole mission profile is almost the same. With the rendezvous and the docking in the circumlunar orbit. So this is the most completed mission design, but has the highest efficiency. So that is the reason why we can get about 2 kilograms of samples with such a small vehicle.
Because there are easier ways to get samples, like former Soviet Union. Russia has use a simpler approach to get samples. But this is, we choose the hard way because we want to demonstrate technically that these are possible and they can be mastered by the future manned mission. So this is the preparation of the future mission.
We went the extra mile just to make sure that this can demonstrate the capabilities for future manned missions.
We choose it not because it's easy, because it's hard.
We just heard the voice that the environment nearby is safe enough for the ground staff.
The Chinese national flag has been raised at the landing site of the Chang'e 6 mission. And we just heard reports that the proximity has been assessed as safe for individuals, for human personnel to move in and take a closer look at the capsule.
Once again, marking another victory of the moon race.
Exactly, a big step there, and they're now reporting the exact coordinates of the landing site.
Well, this is the final report of the concrete coordinates of the returner. This is not a prediction.
落点现场测量完毕，落点经度为东经111度。
So they're reporting that the measurement has been completed at the landing site, and they're just giving the specific coordinates of.
But this coordinate is not only for this single time, but it's also for calculation of future missions. Either it's manned or unmanned missions. These are important data and parameters to calculate future prediction sites.
So what Genshu mentioned, that this is the third time for China, not the second time return from the second cosmic velocity. Because that just before the Chang'e 5 mission, we have a mission called the Chang'e 5 T1. So with that mission, we test the technologies necessary for the return of a spacecraft with speed more than 11 kilometers per second.
根据北京实时数据监视判断及着陆场报告，嫦娥6号返回器已正常返回预定着陆区域。下面请嫦娥6号任务总指挥部总指挥长张克俭同志宣布任务结果。
Mr. Zhang Hejian is the administrator of CNSA.
It's my boss.
Yeah.
We'll be hearing a statement from the director of the China National Space Administration on the Chang'e 6 mission. The ground staff just said that the landing has been completed. We'll take a listen to what the director will be saying.
根据
According to the monitoring of Beijing Aerospace Control Center, the returner of Chang'e 6 mission has landed successfully at Sizhiwang Banner at a designated area. Now I would like to announce that the Chang'e 6 lunar mission has achieved a complete success.
And this just in, the Chang'e 6 return module has successfully touched down in North China's Inner Mongolia region. The announcement you heard just now was made by Zhang Kejian, director of the China National Space Administration. This is mankind's first ever mission to collect samples from the far side of the moon. It has been announced a success. And even as the Chang'e 6 mission comes to a close, its powerful aid, the relay satellite Chichao-2, will continue to work for at least 8 years. It has been tasked with new goals related to China's lunar exploration.
那么我们在26年前后
We plan to launch the Chang'e 7 mission around 2026. It will land on the south pole of the moon's near side. This mission will still require the Chichao-2 relay satellite for relay communication. In phase 4 of lunar exploration, there's also the Chang'e 8 mission scheduled for around 2028. It will also land on the moon's south pole and will again require the Chichao-2 relay satellite. So the Chiaotu is the master switch for the forward missions in Phase 4 lunar exploration, and it needs to work for at least 8 years. Regarding the research objective of the transparent moon, to put it in a simple way, we know a lot about the lunar surface. We have high-resolution cameras, spectrometers for that, but we don't know enough about the inside of the moon. We hope to use multi-physical field probes to help us understand the interior of the moon. For example, what are the materials inside? How are they distributed? And what are the characteristics of those materials?
After the Chang'e 6 probe completed its sampling, the flag of the People's Republic of China was unfurled on the moon's far side on June the 4th. The flag was made with an advanced basalt fusion technology, which gives the material stronger resistance against erosion, as well as extremely high and low temperatures. Scientist CHANG E tells us how the material used to make China's flag on the moon will be used in future missions.
The basalt stone came from Wei County, Hebei Province. It was crushed and melted into a thin filament about 1/3 the diameter of a strand of hair. Then it was spun into threads and woven into cloth. The lunar surface is rich in basalt elements. We will build a lunar base later, so it's very likely that we will make the basalt into fibers and use it as construction material.
And the Chang'e 6 mission is also a testament to international cooperation in space exploration. The probe carried payloads from France, the European Space Agency, Italy, and Pakistan. Some of their scientists witnessed the launch on May the 3rd. Here are some scenes from that historic day.
Definitely, it's probably one of the, I think the most exciting launch I've ever seen in my life.
It will be all right, yes.
You know, in India, when you get married and it rains, it's considered a blessing from the heavens. So hopefully this was also a blessing for CHANG E 6.
I'm excited. Yeah. And it's a great mission. I bring back the samples.
I'm interested to see whether, despite the weather, we're going to go ahead anyway.
I think we're going to go ahead.
We can see the rocket go, we can hear the rocket go, we're close enough to feel the rocket go. What a fantastic launch. We are on the way to the moon. Congratulations, Stas.
And Pakistan's payload on the Chang'e 6 mission was a cube satellite built to take images in space. The iCubeQ satellite is the outcome of cross-cultural collaboration between Pakistan and China.
I think it all started from my childhood. How can we explore the moon and how can we get through the surface of the moon?
跃背实际上就是人类对于未知的一种向往，一种勇气和雄心，能够去地球之外的世界。
Two countries collaborate with each other.
如果卫星成功了，会在第一时间从遥远的38万公里之外收到它的第一个信号。
南洋报告，一方星遥测接收正常。
illuminates everything. It's the first step for Pakistan in deep space missions.
我们在做先叫仰望星空，但是脚踏实地。当夜晚明月高高挂起，你就知道，就在那个地方遥望着我们，我们也在遥望着它。
Chinese President Xi Jinping has welcomed the success of the Chang'e 6 mission. President Xi has also extended his congratulations and greetings to all who participated in the realization of this milestone in China's lunar exploration. The Chang'e 6 lunar probe has just landed at Sizhiwang Banner in the Inner Mongolia region. The Chang'e 6 probe carried a French scientific payload. The chairman of the French National Center for Space Studies, Philippe Baptiste, told CGTN Sun Ye what he is looking forward to in this mission.
There was a French instrument on board of CHANG E 6, Dorn. We were very happy. I mean, last time France was on the moon with an active instrument was in 1970. So I mean, it was quite some time ago. So it was a very nice comeback. So we were very happy to come back on the dark face of the moon. And again, everything went pretty fine, and the data is gathered right now. For the next few months, weeks, and it will take a bit of time to get all the data, and we really look forward to that.
We talked about astrophysics and lunar missions. Are these particularly important areas that need space cooperation?
I think that if you have a look to the missions we run in France, I mean, I would say that 99% of our mission, of our scientific mission, are joint missions with other countries. Why? For a very simple reason. First, I mean, space is very expensive, so we are happy to share. Second, it's a very risky business. I mean, sometimes you launch a mission and it does not work, so we are also happy to share the risks. But on top of that, I mean, we are also very excited to have good partners on board, because when you bring competencies from all over the world on a given scientific mission, then of course it's more likely to be successful. So it's really cooperation in space is really key. This is true for France. I think it's true for most of the countries worldwide.
And you're looking at live images of the landing site in Sizhiwang Banner in Inner Mongolia. I want to get you more analysis with my studio guests here. The landing really went smoothly without a glitch today, and it was announced a success by the Chinese authorities. I do want to take this opportunity, gentlemen, to talk to you about international cooperation, because the Chang'e 6 lunar probe has carried payloads from the European Space Agency, France, Italy, and Pakistan. Mr. Xu, let me start with you. Talk to us about those payloads and their purposes on this mission.
Well, you can see that with the successful completion of the Chang'e 6 mission, that marks the what we call it 3 steps of lunar exploration process: observations, landing, and sample return missions. And based on these 3 steps, there are redundancies of each mission. The Chang'e 4 is a redundancy of Chang'e 3, and Chang'e 6 is redundancy of Chang'e 5, which is also sample return missions. And once the basic mission are complete, the secondary missions are open for international collaborations. This is reflected by the extensive international collaboration of Chang'e 4 and Chang'e 6. The Chang'e 6 has 4 international payloads on board. The French what we call radon detectors to detect the elements, the lunar volatiles of lunar surface, and also the European Space Agency has a payload on board to detect the RNAs and the plasma reactions, in particular the cosmic radiations and solar impacts to the lunar surface and its impact on the plasma itself. And there is also a piggyback payload from Pakistan on the IQBQ, which is a CubeSat mission that is...
Mr. Xu, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's get an update from our reporter Sun Ye, who is live at the Beijing Aerospace Control Center. Sun Ye, I believe it's a big sigh of relief for everyone there. How are things at the control center right now?
Indeed, Zhongshi, celebration has erupted here at the Beijing Control Center. I think you have heard it too. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a congratulatory letter to all the people involved in China's lunar exploration program. And you hear it, people are trying to take pictures. They are, enjoying the hard-won and hard-earned celebration they need so much right now after this epic 53 journey of the world's very first lunar far-side sample retrieve mission. We want to get in there, so I'll just quickly update you with what is going to happen afterwards. So the return capsule, after it's checked up, it will be transported to Beijing by air, and according to China's Space Administration, there will be a handover ceremony in the coming days where the samples from the far side of the moon, as well as other things on board Chang'e 6, will be transferred to the ground application system. And at the ground application system, that's the place where the lunar far side samples will be stored, will be researched, will be analyzed. So we have a lot of things to look forward to after today too. But first, we are trying to get into that celebration downstairs. We'll be sending you back with those footages later. 钟石.
All right, it calls for celebration, a moment like this. Absolutely. Sunya, we appreciate your reporting today. Thank you so much. And let's get back to my studio guests here. Professor Yang, Mr. Xu was talking about the international collaboration that were critical elements of this mission, made it even more successful. Let me get your take also on just how important some of this collaboration with other countries with the same space aspirations are.
You know that China is now a big country in space field, and our purpose is to have to become an advanced country in space field. For becoming an advanced country in space field, we have different benchmarks, we have different criteria. For instance, I believe, personally speaking, I think this time the sample return from the far side of the moon is a very, very important milestone for us to become an advanced country in the aspect of our lunar exploration. But also, you know that for us, we always recognize, according to the white paper of China's space activities, we always recognize the international cooperation as a very, very important criteria to become an advanced country. So you can see that from the beginning of our manned space program and also our lunar exploration programs, we always have the very close cooperation with other countries. For instance, for the TT and C, as I mentioned, the TT and C, all the support from the ground stations are very, very important. Especially for the lunar exploration. You know that we have ground stations in Kashi, in Jiamusi, in Sanya, in our China's territory. But it is quite necessary to have a ground station outside China. Actually speaking, we have a station in Argentina, so we can have a continuous contact with the probes far from Earth in the cislunar space. And also, as the president of CNES has already mentioned, because you know that with cooperation between different countries, we can reduce the risk of a certain country, and also we can greatly reduce the cost for the certain country. So, because you know that for the lunar explorations and other deep space missions, this is to benefit the whole world, to get the knowledge for all human beings. So I think for all space capable nations, it's already formed the trend to have this kind of cooperations. There is almost no exceptions.
In terms of what's going to happen to those soil samples, the last time with what's been collected from the near side of the moon, China made it available to other countries. Of course, China studied it first and then made it available to other countries. Mr. Xu, is it the same this time?
Yes, I think, well, I just mentioned there's a couple more payloads on board the mission also from Italy and also from Pakistan. And also we understand that the sample returned is going to be shared, as you have just mentioned. This mission is completed with the also a data relay satellite, which is also going to be made available to international communities if you want to research and send missions to the far side of the moon, because communication speed has been radically increased with the new relay satellite, even though the old relay satellite is still functioning. And then the samples, once collected, will be analyzed, will be categorized, and we'll have what we call a sample sharing policy. And that policy has been pushed out based on the Chang'e 5 mission. More than 1,000 institutes have applied for the data for the samples to study. Of course, the sample has to be kept in intact conditions, and then after you complete your study, you have to return it back to the lunar office. But those are policies you have to follow to share the samples from the Chinese mission. Of course, the far side of the moon is more interesting because it has more different radiation environment. It also has more exposure to the cosmic rays, and different conditions in the far side of the moon is more interesting to the scientific community in geological aspects, in radioactive aspects, and many other physicals and chemical aspects. So many experts are looking forward to these samples and to compare maybe with the Apollo missions, with the Russian missions, and maybe other previous missions that they have data, and they want to make a comparison with previous samples to make more scientific discoveries and more profound understanding of the universe.
It just occurred to me that it's been 3.5 years since the Chang'e 5 mission came back. Have any findings from the research into those samples been made public?
Exactly. You see that with the help of the samples we get from the Chang'e 5 mission, we know that the volcanic activities of the moon is much more younger than we expected before. It's several billion years younger than the traditional theories before. So this is one very important result from the Chang'e 5 mission. Another thing is that that there are some components that do not exist on the Earth. So we are the third country in the world to get the compound from another world. It is also named as the Chang'e stone. So this is also very interesting. And also, just in recent days, we found some carbon-based compound from the samples of the Chang'e 5 samples. So this is also really important for the future potential exploitation of the moon. So you can see that we already have so much results, very helpful for, as Yan Song mentioned, to understand the evolution of the history of the moon, and also have their engineering meanings to get a better understanding of how many water inside the samples, and so we can help us to determine where to get the waters on the lunar surface in the future. You know that for the future lunar base, either a robotic one or a manned base, it is very important to reduce the cost. One important measure to achieve this goal is to have the on-site resource utilization technologies. But first thing first, when you want to utilize the resources on the lunar surface, you must understand it. So this sample is the first step to achieve this goal.
Mr. Xu mentioned over 1,000 institutes have applied to study the samples from Chang'e 5. What about this time? Do you think that more countries are, trying to get in the line for the research into the samples from the far side of the moon, because this is the first time?
Absolutely. You should remember that the previous 10 missions, including the 6 Apollo missions, the 3 lunar missions from the former Soviet, including also our Chang'e 5 mission, all these 10 missions get the samples from the near side, actually speaking, the 19 million square kilometers. Well, on the other, that the total area of...
Were they technically unable to collect samples from the far side of the moon? Why did they not venture out into the far side?
Well, that first, that the evolution of the moon is interaction between the Earth and the moon. Because of influence of the Earth, so not only the terrain of the far side is quite different from the moon, from the near side. Also, you may notice that there are more impact craters on the far side of the moon. And also, the composition of the soils, the regolith, the rock, is also quite different from those on the near side. So I can almost confirm that we can get quite different informations from the samples from the near side of the moon. So this is very helpful. You know that the cooperation between China and the U.S. is blocked by what's called the Wolf Amendment of the United States. But still, the administrator of NASA pressed his switch to gather our samples from far side of the moon. So this is one important one aspect to show the importance of the necessity to get samples from far side of the moon.
Well, I think it's technical challenges that 40 years ago was the last sample return missions from Soviet Union and US. And then with these 40 years of technology innovations, we are able to achieve this with much more ease on the far side of them, because it's more challenging technically. You need to really relay the informations on the TTNCs and command and control And then also you have to launch a relay satellite to the halo orbit, which is around the lunar far side, and also you have to land the mission and bring it sample return missions, more complex to achieve 40 years ago than in comparison with now. But I think also in the future there is also Artemis missions from US that has also a combination of manned missions plus sample return missions. Those are what we call it man-selected samples. Then they will be returned to Earth. It's more complex and more extensive in the coming future. But at this moment, this robotic mission of the Chinese CNSA is the best and the most historic mission as we have landed on far side of the moon and bring samples back, which is also encouraging to the scientific community that for the first time you can get your hands on the far side of the moon.
So being able to get the samples and return the samples from the far side of the moon does demonstrate China's scientific and technological know-how and advancement in this field. Gentlemen, we're talking about international cooperation. I do want to get into this very tough question also because you see NASA and the European Space Agency both watch this process very closely. They have extended very warm, very nice messages towards China's success in this mission. But is it making them, I believe it's making them excited on the one hand, but is it also making them nervous about how advanced China has become in terms of its lunar exploration? The last thing we want to see is a repeat of the space race that happened between the United States and the former Soviet Union. Could they look at this as another space race of the 21st century, Professor Yang?
I can understand you mentioned about this because you know that in the media of other countries there are always this kind of saying that there is another space race, that there is a competition. But for China, we've already stated very, very clear. We don't compete with any other country. We emphasized many times it's meaningless, it's completely meaningless to compete with another country. China conducts its space program, including our lunar exploration program, to promote China's high technology, to have returns from the development of research works and also to get the scientific research results to benefit the whole human being. So it's really, really useless to compete with our country. They can recognize it as a competition. It's okay for them, but we don't think it is a competition. So maybe they want to get the first one, but we don't care. We just do this with our own schedule. So I don't think, at least from our China side, we don't have any competition, and we will not compete with another country. So we don't think this is a space race, whatever they think about. So, but on the other hand, you see that they worry about this. They think this is a threat, but you should be aware that the technologies. We can understand that that the space industry comes from the beginning of the Second World War. So it has a dual use, it has a bilateral use. But you see today the lunar explorations, especially this kind of scientific research, the space exploration programs is completely civil program for the completely scientific research purposes. You can see one thing is important. When you come back from the Earth, you need 3 to 5 days. So this is not.
Hold that thought, Professor Yang. This is an interesting topic. I want to return to you for more on this. And President Xi Jinping has welcomed the success of the Chang'e 6 mission. He also extended his congratulations and greetings to all who participated in the realization of this milestone in China's lunar exploration. President Xi pointed out that the Chang'e 6 mission marks the first time in the world for samples from the far side of the moon to be brought back to Earth. He also urged researchers to continue studying the lunar samples. He encouraged the implementation of major space projects, including deep space exploration and the strengthening of international exchanges and cooperation to make new achievements for the enhancement of the well-being of mankind. The latest message from the Chinese president, who obviously has congratulated the team on pulling this off. Mr. Xi, let me also get your take on the topic we were discussing just now. How do you think the rest of the world will view China's advancement in its lunar exploration program, despite China's efforts, and I should mention repeated efforts, to vow to make this as international as possible?
Well, I think the Chinese mission, as Professor Yang mentioned, we have our own schedules. I think the roadmap has been very clearly paved out. We now have 3 steps I have mentioned. The sample return marking the end of the first 3 steps, which is explorations, and then next step will be what we call a scientific base establishment. And this will be involving also further robotic missions to study the in situ resource and to establish the communications and powers for future infrastructures. And then we will understand the lunar Earth itself for the characters, so that we can have 3D printings for future inhabitants using the lunar Earth and using the in situ resource and lunar volatiles to prepare for future missions. And also we know that we have also a manned mission planned by 2030, and that is also taking concrete steps. We just seen a couple of weeks ago the engine for the mission has been tested and with great success, and we are expecting the rockets to be completed very soon to test the new capsules. And then we do have our own process, and then future we will have robotic missions and the space labs merging with the manned missions, so that we can have extensive and longer duration of stay on the lunar surface. This is of course the Chinese steps and rhythms and tempos to study the moon. And we don't try to compete with any countries. We do have our own rhythms to work on the lunar explorations based on the national powers and the economic conditions. We know that space is very expensive, and we do seek extensive international collaborations so that we can share the resource and reduce the cost among our partners. And we do understand there is also Artemis efforts that lead by US and joined by more than 30 countries, that they want to build a gateway, which is a manned posted lunar orbiting station, so that they can have return of samples and human missions to the lunar surface. And they want to merge the commercial sectors onto this, because we know NASA have called already what we call in commercial LEO. The low Earth orbit will be fully commercialized. So if you are military or a government, you want to purchase the data or the satellites, you can go on commercial basis. And this is also true on the prelude of the lunar mission for the US missions, because they want to use the commercial sectors to establish infrastructures, powers, resources, fueling stations, oxygens, or waters on the lunar surface before they send a man to the lunar surface itself. So there is also international cooperation on that effort as well. I think lunar exploration is basically peaceful purpose, and also we have our own rhythms and our own steps to take, and there's no competition involved. But I think in the future we can share more data and resources and research and samples. So that will be a proper way, so that we can have an international family. What we call the European Space Agency director have called the Moon Village, will be one of the effort that we can, one of the scenarios that we look forward, so that we can share everything in the same village, not to compete and to fight on the lunar surface, if only on the moon, on the Earth.
All right, gentlemen, do stay with me here on our program. France's payload on the Chang'e 6 is an instrument to measure levels of radon on the moon. French scientist Pierre-Yves Meslin witnessed the probe's launch in May and was inspired to write a poem, which he has shared with us. And let's pick up our conversation with my studio guests here. Professor Yang, I'm very interested in the dual purposes you mentioned in past space programs after World War II. Now, of course, military use is a far-fetching concept here, but what about civilian use? What can be harnessed from the success of the Chang'e missions, both 5 and 6, into more tangible civilian use for now?
Well, you know that we already discussed because the space technology comes from the World War II, actually speaking from the V2 rocket made by von Braun's team. But you know that after half a century of development, many technology we developed has already been purely civil use. For instance, in the early age, the missiles use a propellant system very similar to the launch vehicles. But you know that's usually that's the hypergolic propulsion system, which means that it's stored in the room temperature and can work in room temperature. But today, for the high efficiency, most launch vehicles use a cryogenic propulsion system, which must be kept in a very extreme low temperature, like our Long March 5. So this obviously they do not have any military usage. And also, as we already discussed, you know, our Chang'e 5 and 3 return from the moon to take about 3 to 5 days. So that's a very long period that do not have any military applications. So that's obviously for purely civil use. So you see today, what you ask is very important. We should understand that most of the benefit from this kind of lunar exploration programs comes from the transfer of technologies we developed during these kind of programs. But this transfer usually is a very long period. Most of them are indirect ones. So that's very, very important for you know that I am a technician in space field. I always think it is my duty, my responsibility to tell the public about why it is very long, why it is so complicated, and we should be patient about the transfer of these technologies. So today, everything for our daily life cannot live without the space technology. We have so many examples, but most are indirect ones.
Professor Yang, Mr. Xu, it's been a pleasure having you on our special coverage today. Thank you so much for your expertise and analysis. We appreciate it. And with that, we come to the end of our special coverage on the Chang'e 6 mission. Before we go, let's take a look at some highlights of Chang'e 6's journey home.
逗号注意，轨返分离。
落点纬度，北纬4两度，2要分3两秒。人数2号8.5标，正确，往线。出减速伞，返回器拨减速伞，主伞展开。返回器着陆。
Show de bola, né? Viu o que eu falei? Não dá para entender muito mais coisa, não é, né? Porque é mais completo, né? Bacana demais, né? Muito legal. Ó, tô preparando um vídeo que vai sair amanhã para vocês aí, que é a abertura da cápsula já. Isso, os chineses já abriram a cápsula. Não vou dar spoiler de imagens, mas amanhã sai o vídeo mostrando a abertura da cápsula, como é que vão ser analisadas as primeiras análises aí desse material que a China trouxe do lado oculto da Lua. Bacana demais, né? Isso aí, galera. Você curte o nosso canal? Então aqui, ó. Já usou? Então vamos usar agora, ó. Senta aí o dedão no like para o canal crescer, para o YouTube entregar esse vídeo para cada vez mais pessoas, né? Outra coisa, eu queria que todos aí que assistiram aí mandassem um salve pro Alfredo, né? Que o Alfredo colabora com a gente aqui, manda essas traduções, né? Muito bacana, e ele faz isso de maneira gratuita, só para colaborar com o canal e para trazer informação para a gente. Então, todo mundo aí, galera, ó, mandar um grande salve aí para o Alfredo, que está lá em Portugal e faz sempre essas traduções importantíssimas aí, para a gente entender mais sobre as missões. Muito obrigado, viu, Alfredo? Mais uma vez, tá certo? E se você curte muito o canal aqui, quer dar uma força pra gente, faz demais, galera. Só se tornar espaçonauta de carteirinha. Ah, como é que é isso, Neto? Facinho aqui, ó. A partir de 16 centavos por dia. 16 centavos por dia é muito pouquinho, né, gente? Dá R$ 4,99 durante 30 dias, durante um mês. Aí você se torna membro do canal. É só clicar aqui, ó. Tem um botão aqui, ó. Cá embaixo, ó. Seja membro, tá vendo? Tá vendo aí? Olha para baixo aí, tá vendo? Isso aí. É nesse botão aí. Clica aí. Tem várias propostas de associação a partir de R$ 4,99. E aí você vai obter várias vantagens aqui no canal. Vai assistir os vídeos primeiro. Vai participar das lives que nós vamos começar no próximo mês a fazer aí para os espaçonautas, só para os membros do canal. Pode participar do nosso grupo de WhatsApp, concorrer a sorteios de brindes aí da nossa loja Nerd aos 50. Então é bacana demais. Você não vai ficar de fora dessa, vai? De jeito nenhum, né? Então clica aí e vem ser espaçonauta de carteirinha. Grande abraço, até o nosso próximo vídeo.